City Council work session on March 11th. Ms. Would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Williams. Here. Ms. Ramsey.
Here.
Mayor Pons.
Here.
Vice Mayor.
Here.
Ms. Kernscher.
Here.
And thank you all for indulging us and scheduling this an hour early. Could make sure that item preview, Mr. David.
Yes. So the council meeting on Thursday, start off with a new business, and we have a renewal or an affirming of our funding commitment with VDOT for some smart scale projects, and then we'll move on from there to authorization to negotiate an interim agreement with Horgan Construction. I really thought we'd have an interim agreement done, and I don't think we're going to, so we'll change the wording of that to just be negotiate. That represents the next step in the library process, is the culmination of, I guess, the next phase, the evaluation committee's review of the three applications, the three responses we got to the RFP, and their recommendation to proceed with just one into the next phase. And the next step after we agree to the interim process, public venue. And so what the committee will be asking Horgan to help the public process will include looking at various designs and sketches, interior, exterior locations on the site, a full and comprehensive review of what's planned, so that the evaluation can then formal recommendation. So then we have a consideration of the laureate program for the city and a budget amendment, followed by appointments to boards and commissions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Tripp? Takes us now to public comment, and I do have several speakers card here, but this would be an opportunity for anybody else that would like to come forward to speak. They're certainly welcome to. And first, I have Dr. Cranbuell. Welcome. You just name and address for the record. Keep your comments about 5 minutes.
Mayor Pons, I'm here to address what I would try to have happen in reality, but which hasn't, based on what I just heard. Here says that you asked the committee to review 3 proposals, recommendation, not a decision, a recommendation. Following was 4 meetings. Okay. I think I would like to start with the one meeting I had at the librarian this morning. It went extremely well. And I think, first of all, that in her eyes, all 3 proposals met the needs of the library, given the level at which they were made. That's very important. She also said that what we need is some more approximate details of how to meet the space needs, but she said it costs money. So they decided that they don't have enough money to pay people to do that. So they forced to decide one. I find that thinking weak. First of all, it should be discussed publicly by City Council. It's not to be decided by the committee. And totally believes in the role of the public at all levels of the decision process, which of course hasn't happened. There hasn't been any. So I wrote this out initially before I met with her, and I want to thank Pat, Stacy for very open. It's the first time I learned committee. It's the first time I learned what was their charge, although it was totally unclear. It's nice that I know it's to recommend, not decide. So, do we have of what the librarian and all want? So, as we say, the informed participation is the cornerstone of democracy. I'll put on that, the trouble with democracy is that it denies the government, 4, 5, and the city manager itself the wisdom and resources of the whole community. Totally absent of this process up till now. So what we have? No involvement of residents in the decision process. No open public meetings with residents, city council members regarding this process. And we have the city council created the committee. It created it in a closed, which actually is a secret session, fine, except that we never found out what happened in the creation of this committee. There's no, I couldn't find, and I've gone through all the minutes, the charge of the committee, which now I see recommend. I didn't know, I don't know when they meet, and Chris Garrison in our community said, it's totally secretive, we can't talk about it. Now let's go a couple other details then. Okay, so we have in the city's brochure here, a statement that says, no actions will be taken by city council without a highly publicized statement following input on the building's design. It leaves out the important part and the design of the most important city center block with respect to how the building is in the landscape and all that. And equally important, the procedures that are defined in the RFP for the proposal, which says right here, after receipt of the proposals on June 27th, after receipt of the proposals, a short list of to be established will be, and then this short list of proposals will be asked questions and responses and develop all of this, okay? Of course, it's a nuance, short list. Okay, so where are we now? We have a committee that eliminated 2 of the 3 proposals. Eliminated. Cold turkey. And now it proceeds that you should vote on one proposal without even hearing what the other 2 have said. Absolutely. And we just go ahead like everybody else thought the proposal would be. And the process that's going on now is in total opposite to what you assured me in the spring when they came in, and it's a total opposite of what you assured me when we had the dedication for the sports center. It's just totally undemocratic and wrong, and a disgrace for Williamsburg if it isn't corrected. Now, I've written to all 5 of you, and there's a lot of other things I want to share with you. They don't belong to be said here, and I have 5 minutes, and I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Cranbiel.
Thank you for listening and hopefully responding. It's very important.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker's card I have is Richard Lampert. Thank you, sir. If you just state your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Richard Brigham Lampert. People who know me call me Brig. For the last 16 years, my wife Jennifer and I have owned and resided at 349 Scotland Street, right over there on the next block. So this is my neighborhood, Peacock Hill. When on January 9th, Ms. Yuri Matsumoto briefed you all on the revisions to the vibrancy study back from 2018, being familiar with that, I read the news report. when she in her presentation mentioned that Peacock Hill was the intended location of the children's park, this piqued my interest further. So I went down the rabbit hole, and I've watched and read all related documents to the January 28th Planning Commission work session, your budget retreat on Valentine's Day. I've read all of the materials released in George Arbogast's FOIA request, and I've had personal discussions with Ms. Matsumoto and Tevye Griffin and Planning Commission Chair James Boswell, from all of which the following is apparent: that the exploratory or discovery phase for this downtown park was included in the 2023 GIOs, meaning it passed in November of 22, which means that you all have been talking about this children's park down here for the last 2.5 years. That for at least a full year, it's been intended for Peacock Hill. This was not, in my experience, disclosed at the future festivals. It was floated there as a hypothetical. That specifically, the intention is to put it in the Henry Street pasture, right over there across from the P1 parking garage, and that it's going to include, quote, a splash pad feature, sand play, whatever that is, an enclosed carousel, as well as regular old playground equipment. That there is already a rendering, which was distributed to the Planning Commission at the January 28th work session on page 49 of their materials, that it's marked in the current GIOs with a 250th Legacy Project stamp, meaning it's earmarked for completion by the 4th of July 2026, the nation's 250th birthday, which is just a little over a year. And finally, that on your Valentine's Day retreat, Davenport Financial said that if the project is going to be completed in that time, that it is this spring that you all must pursue a direct bank loan for $6.5 million. Now, the Peacock Hill neighborhood and we opposed construction on that particular pasture back in 2019 when we submitted a petition to Carolyn Murphy, who was then the planning commissioner. But I want to make clear I am not against vibrancy, downtown vibrancy in general. There's a lot of stuff that has been accomplished over the years that I really like. Second Sundays, for example, which just occurred yesterday. I love them. I sit on my porch. I enjoy the whole scene. It's great. The outdoor seating that's popped up all over town, that's terrific too. The flowers that are in constant rotation, basically anything that Culture Fix does down here is terrific. The summer concerts, be they big, be they small, the Christmas market when it comes. The thing about all of that though is it's temporary. All of it's temporary, and by 8 o'clock at night, everyone's packed up, everyone's gone home, and Peacock Hill, for the most part, is dead as a doornail, which is how we like it. Nobody who has chosen to buy and to live down here did so in the hopes that you all would permanently change the character of the neighborhood, which this splash pad, I believe, would. In particular, there are 4 groups of people that we who live down here know about that sort of, hang in the area in the nights, okay? Number 1, they're the skateboarders. They use the P1 parking garage on most warm nights, most seasons, warm seasons of the year, as a skate park. And if it's not them, it's the drag racers. If they're not on the streets, there are people working out their muscle cars literally in the parking lot. There's a homeless population, as you know, that congregates around the public library and the fountain out here. And then, of course, the college students, who as a rule just stay up later than all of us anyway, right? None of this is criminal activity, none of it is criminal behavior, but I am simply pointing out that there are groups that frequent Peacock Hill at nighttime for whom this children's park with a splash pad feature and a carousel might be an invitation to sort of nocturnal activities. And you can imagine for yourselves what might be found the next morning when a family shows up to go to the park. I do understand that you might want to make a splash, no pun intended, for the 250th birthday. I get that. That makes sense to me. I would like in this case for you please to consider Bicentennial Park as in opposition to Peacock Hill. Number 1, the city already owns the land, so that's a hurdle that does not need to be jumped, right? Number 2, the feeling of the project, the timbre of what has been described and what's been shown in the rendering fits better with like the whimsical character over there in Bicentennial Park with the children's statues, the DeWitt Wallace, etc. Number 3, it's closer to the family-friendly restaurants like Mellow Mushroom, like Precarious, etc., right? Number 4, it's still an entrance corridor to the city. So the statement is still made when tour buses come down. It's just on South Henry Street rather than North Henry Street, but you still get the same effect. There are fewer neighbors. Bicentennial Park is fronted on one side by the Center for State Courts and the law school. Then you got a parking lot. Then you got the DeWitt Wallace, and then just a tiny little handful of homes. And if the park is put down in the hollow, it's not going to affect them with light or noise pollution. You escape in Bicentennial Park at least 3 of those 4 populations. You'd still have to worry about the college students, right? But as far as I'm aware, the other populations don't exist down there at night. And finally, I think it's just more sensible and more symbolic that 50 years after Bicentennial Park was christened for the nation's 200th birthday, you add this new feature for the 250th. It's more sensible, it's more symbolic. I ask you please just to consider that because we remain down here resistant to that bastard.
The next speaker's card I have is Chuck Keating. Welcome, Mr. Keating. If you just state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to about 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. My name is Chuck Keating. I live at 321 North Henry Street. Brigg is my next-door neighbor. So I'm not going to reiterate. The thing I want to talk about is the park and the plan for that. The Peacock Hill is kind of special. I've lived there since in 2019. It's always been a great place. The neighbors are fantastic. So I want to get to a couple of points. I've seen the pasture's special to me. I walk past there pretty much every day. It's a very serene, very nice place. I've seen things that some of the animals, the animal husbandry that's done there. It's some things that people, I've seen young children that's the only time they've ever seen an oxen. So I think it's a very special place. But I'm down to 4 minutes, so let me get down to the point here. I've seen 3 times that, and this is the third, 3 times that particular parcel, and it's only a 4-block area, Peacock Hill, 3 times that has been challenged as far as doing something. First time was in 2019. We had just moved in. And they were trying to piece together 2 parcels and sell it and have a single-family home built there. That was put down. The second time was in the vibrancy study, where I think 36 homes, townhomes, that were there, and it was a god-awful looking thing, at least for me, looking at that. That was before my time. But the other thing about that vibrancy study is I started reading a little bit more depth. There were 59 stakeholders who were interviewed for that vibrancy study. Certainly I wasn't one. I don't believe my neighbors were. But I think some of the things in there I believe were very good, as with all things. That plan for that pasture in Peacock Hill, I believe, was out of sync with the character of Williamsburg. So the third one came up with this capital improvement project with that children's park and splash pad. Who can argue against children? We all love them. But when you look deeper at what we have that's very unique and special in the community of Williamsburg, I think, as I won't repeat what Brigg has said as far as location, but I'd like to emphasize a couple of things. One is the consistency with the Colonial Williamsburg mission. I don't believe that a children's park and splash pad is consistent with what Colonial Williamsburg is trying to achieve in the historical representation. There's a certain ambiance that you get, and I walk through Colonial Williamsburg almost every day. Certain ambiance that's there, and everybody here knows that. I think putting something like a children's park and a splash pad in there is exactly contrary to what that ambiance is trying to seeks to employ. There's always a trade-off, and to me, Colonial Williamsburg has a very special mission for education. And with respect to that education, there's a trade-off with recreation. I don't believe that in that particular location that the trade-off for recreation versus the education is certainly something we would aspire to in this community. When I look at that, the opportunities to educate young people on the nature of the colonial era and how the animals were an integral part of that far outweighs what we might benefit from in that area from a children's park or a splash pad. I did a little bit of homework, and before I say that, there's always been a precedent of preserving the uniqueness of Colonial Williamsburg and that educational aspect. I did a quick look. There are other places that Williamsburg is not the only place on earth that has, or in the U.S., that has this historical aspect. I found three notable, but many more. I'll emphasize these. Old Salem Museums and Gardens in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, about 100 acres. They preserve the 18th and 19th, early 19th century. Their relevance is they have adjacent green spaces. And this is something that I've seen. There's always that trade-off between we want more housing, we want dense housing, and the green spaces. Williamsburg has been very good at preserving the green space, particularly on the entryways into the colonial area. That pasture is a primary example. There is the
I've gone over your
historic.
time, so if you could just wrap it up, please.
Wrap it up, okay. There are two other ones, I won't go into them now, but my point is this, and I'll be succinct. That pasture has much more utility, serving the educational purposes of Colonial Williamsburg and the uniqueness of this historical area than any children's park or splash pad. They're not in direct confrontation, but as Briggs said, we need to look at other places to provide the needs of the community. That pasture, to me, is special. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your comments. Would anybody else like to come forward? So we got one standing up, and then I'll get you next.
I wasn't going to talk. Ruth Kaiser, 609 Richmond Road.
Welcome.
I'm listening to what the speakers are saying, and especially for a place like Peacock Hill, they have, if you look at them like this podium top, this pasture is right here. It's the only buffer they have that protects that little neighborhood from commercial and other high-density residential pressures. Where I live on Richmond Road, we're getting pressure from four sides, and it's a very, very uncomfortable place to be. That pasture is not only their buffer, but it's one of the things that inspires excitement, surprise, and awe when you walk around Williamsburg. What? There's an open green space with oxen in there, and if you time your day right, you can see the guy in the colonial garb with this little stick walking the oxen down the street to go to their night stay. It's unbelievable. You're never going to see that anywhere else. What you are going to see other places is high density and splash pads and all the things that other places have. And our job, if we're going to follow in the heritage of Colonial Williamsburg and what the restoration did, our job now is to preserve what we have, because as soon as you do something like wipe out this pasture and put something there, or build high density here up to 4 stories, all you got to do is wait another few years, and that precedent has been set, and now we have 6 stories, and we have, you know, something else here that is so out of character with Colonial Williamsburg that we're going to trade that short-sighted development for what's been standing for almost 100 years that the whole world values. And I would beg of you to think of Colonial Williamsburg and the area immediately adjacent to it as our buffer from what the normal world does. You should not be following the recommendations of the normal world. We're special. We should stay that way. 3 minutes and 3 seconds.
Well, you did it in 2 minutes, so thank you, Ms. Kaiser. Ms. Keene? Oh, okay. Oh, Bob? Welcome, Ms. Keene. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
I missed you guys. Debbie Keene, 718 Jamestown Road. I'm going to change the subject just a little bit, but might touch on the splash park in the end. I'm here in support of the renovation and the expansion of 312 Waller Mill Road property for CDR, which is coming up next. When we moved here to Williamsburg in 2000, we had 3 small children, all under the age of 6. We were renovating a 100-year-old house to turn it into a B&B. Our youngest son, John, was just 18 months old, and John had been born with a cleft palate, which is a birth defect that also left him deaf in one ear with minimal hearing in the other. He had numerous surgeries over the years to repair his cleft palate and multiple hospitalizations for other medically related issues, which affected his normal childhood development. He struggled to communicate and started having tantrums in front of the refrigerator just because he couldn't express that he was hungry or he was thirsty. After numerous surgeries and hospitalizations over the first 2 years of his life, we were all exhausted and frustrated. Unless you've walked in the shoes of a parent with a child that has developmental delays or disabilities, you cannot imagine the pain, the guilt, the exhaustion, and the strain on the entire family. I was given CDR's number by our craniofacial clinic that we attended at CHKD in Norfolk. They were unbelievably supportive and had John and I come in for an evaluation within the first week. For the first time, I felt hope and support that we never knew was there. We brought him up to CDR building in Norwich once a week for a play group, which is a lot more than a play group. And at the same time, they offered parent group support sessions. Just knowing we weren't alone made the world of difference. They directed us in the right direction to get John a hearing aid and started his speech therapy right away. We then traveled to Norwich twice a week and had an in-home speech therapist, Miss Beth, who would come once a week. They taught John sign language, which allowed him to communicate with us. He was a new child. His frustrations were lessened. After he graduated from CDR, he attended the Norwich Elementary School Special Ed Preschool for 2 years before going to kindergarten. After he graduated from Norwich, John attended Matthew Whaley, where he was enrolled in kindergarten, and with the help of CDR, we were able to obtain an IEP in place for John to receive speech therapy. Over the next 15 years, which you saw some of, John had multiple surgeries, and for some reason, by the grace of God, he started hearing from his deaf ear. No medical person can explain. So we truly feel blessed, and all the pieces fell together. There is no way that my son would have ever progressed or succeeded at the rate he did without the love and support of CDR. I was a registered nurse for almost 20 years before I had John and never knew about the wonderful services that they provide to children and their families. They took us under their wings and they allowed John to thrive. John successfully completed high school at Lafayette, went on to college where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in history and a minor in leadership. He was a D1 athlete during college on the ODU baseball team and is currently on the coaching staff of ODU baseball. I truly believe he would have gone down a totally different road if he was not given the early intervention that was provided by CDR. I truly hope that you'll support the renovation and the expansion of the CDR Waller Mill facility. It may seem silly to say that the drive to Norwich is difficult and exhausting, but when you look at a special needs child, it's not just the drive. You look at the exhausted family members due to all the other care that these children require. Williamsburg children and families are fortunate to have the services of CDR, now after COVID especially. If we don't help the children and their families at an early age, we make it difficult for those children to ever be successful in life. I can't even imagine that the city would not support this request, hopefully with even a little more dollars in it. I feel this need should come before we spend any funds on a $6 million splash park. We need to focus on the children at an early age, or we lose them when frustration sets in. They quit because it's too hard and the parents have no idea where to turn. I will hope that the city will support this request with maybe even a larger dollar donation than requested. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Keene. Would anybody else like to come forward? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion of the meeting and we'll move on to background presentations. And first is the presentation from the CDR, Child Development Resources, funding request to support renovations and expansion to 312 Waller Mill Road. Welcome, Mr. Scott.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pons and members of the council. That was completely unexpected and welcome, and it ties together with what I'd like to report. So I think you have the slideshow in front of you about the former historic Triangle Community Services Building that CDR is in the midst of renovating now.
Mr. Scott, did you want to, is it on here, or
It should be.
Uh-oh, do I need to hit?
you get to control the remote?
Oh, man. There it goes. All right. So as you can see, our anticipated move-in date conservatively is February 26th. We do hope to get in a little bit earlier than that, but that's, we're saying that to dampen down expectations about our move. Our vision for this facility is to create the community's first family resource center, which is a place where all families in need can come and get the support they need for their kids. Right now, I just checked from the feasibility study, there were 133 kids, City Williamsburg kids aged pre-K to kindergarten entry age. That's the age we serve at CDR. 21% of those children were listed as special education, and our role is to intervene as early as possible with those kids. And you heard a great example tonight of how much of a long-term impact that can have on a child's life individually and the family collectively, but also on the city's contribution and the expense at the school level. Because if those kids don't need additional speech therapy, say in high school, then it saves the community quite a bit of money. We have, as you see, we've cut off part of this. It says we've raised about $9.45 million towards the $13 million goal, and it says $3.7 million in proposals currently under consideration. That number's risen to about 4.2. We found a few extra resources to lean into and are considering a congressional directed spending request to support 3 new programs that we have to support families, and I'll share those with you now. The one is we have signed an agreement with the Medical College of Virginia to have their pediatric neurologists do rotations at CDR here in Williamsburg. And part of why we felt that was important is not only does it take about 10 months for a family to get an appointment with a pediatric neurologist, but they typically have to drive either to Norfolk or the Children's Hospital in Richmond. So our approach was to twist that around and to bring the medical professionals to Williamsburg and have those families meet here. We also want to really help the medical residents who are medical doctors, but they're in their residency at MCV, understand what it looks like to have a child with special needs and what their interactions with that family mean at home. So we intend for them to go on home visits and sit in on assessments and participate in infant massage classes and all those things. The second new service we have is called an ADOS clinic, and it's the Autism Diagnostic Observation Scale. Right now, a family who suspects or their pediatrician's concerned their child may have autism, it's about a 10 to 11 month wait to get that appointment to do the assessment. We've shortened that to about 3 weeks, because what we've done is taken all the pieces that normally live in a doctor's office and brought them in-house. So our staff can do the screening. We have a medical director who can now sign off on that after they look at the social history and interview the family. And so that what is important for those families is speeding up the point at which they can be eligible for certain benefits. And that can mean a lot to them over time. We've also added recently, last year, a program to address the mental health needs of young children who've experienced trauma like domestic violence or having a parent with a mental health or substance abuse issue. And we do play therapy with the little one while the adult is getting support, individualized support, and that program's brand new. So all those will be operated out of this facility. Right now we're in 6 different locations scattered all throughout the area, including James City and the James City County and York County, and we're all going to be consolidated here. So this is the aerial view of the site plan, and I think there's a pointer on here, but dare I risk doing anything to the screen. The parking lot is now subject to an easement agreement that we signed so that the city staff can go and have quicker, easier access to the flag lot that basically surrounds this property. So where you see at the top of the screen those little squares, that's the Master Gardeners area, and that sits on City Williamsburg property. And just beyond that is the property for Wallamill Elementary. So the new playground is on our side, but we want to have the Master Gardeners involved with us, and they've made a commitment to help our kids understand the value. We'll bring in fresh vegetables for them to eat. So I wanted to put up the floor plan as well. You can see it's quite a large space. The red star represents where the sort of the next images are. So the building on the right in that light green is under construction right now. The footers have been laid down this week, and everything else to the left is existing. So if you're standing on that red star, that's what it will look like when you enter the new space. Receptionist on the left, and those doors behind you, if open, lead to that view. On the left is a family room where families get individualized support, and it's a co-facilitated, parent-facilitated group. And at the very far end is a skills development room. It's one of two large meeting spaces in this facility that allow us to host groups like CPMT and other community groups that need a place to meet. That's what it looks like as of about 2 months ago. So that's the main interior space of Waller Mill Road. If you've been in that space before, this looks very different than it used to look. There was one large open space in the middle, and then it was just a labyrinth of rooms. So that's all been removed. And this photo on the right was from a tour that we gave to our board of directors about 2-3 weeks ago. And there's now some framing going on in that space. We've got the next star sort of shows you where the child care classrooms are. Part of the appeal of this space, there was an organization in the area. It was Community Action Agency, had a Head Start program, and they ran their classrooms there. So we already had sprinklers in the roof, and we had egress. Those were the firefighters loved the egress, and that was important for us because it minimized the renovation costs. And so that is where the child care. When we went in, you remember that hallway where the child care classrooms were, all that block is now gone, and they've started to frame and redo the drainage lines and sprinkler and HVAC and everything else. It's a complete redo. That is the rendering of what the child care classroom will look like. This space was notorious for being kind of dark and dingy, and so you can see there was some special attention paid to enlarging the windows so that and children do really well with natural light, and we wanted to make sure they had plenty of it. And this star is sitting on top of what we are calling the children's room, and that's going to serve in the morning as the developmental playgroup, which, as you've heard, has a lot more impact on families than just a safe place for kids to play. They get to interact with kids with all sorts of developmental backgrounds, and it's really a wonderful experience. That is the center of the room, and that's what the room will look like. And if you notice right above that woman that's waving in front of that brown door, there's an overhead light, and that is actually a solo tube. And this place was kind of dark, and it was hard to get natural light in, so we brought it in from the ceiling. And I'm praying it doesn't leak, but that's the plan, to make sure that this space feels as natural and well lit as possible. It'll also keep our electric bills down. But I wanted to highlight that light because on this image, which is taken from the mezzanine looking down toward that same room, there's a little red dot that's sitting beside all those steel studs. You see that little red dot on there that is the location of one of the solar tubes, and anywhere you see a pink circle on the floor correlates directly up above where a solar tube will bring light back down into this space. It's a large space, as you all know, and it's going to serve us well into the community. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions, but the building is coming along quite well. We're about a quarter way through the renovation. We've had some costs, unexpected costs, but we've also found some savings in different places. We were able to reuse most of the big sprinkler line, and then we had to replace the lead lines and the sprinkler heads. So we were able to find some savings as we go, and it's about every week we meet over there and talk through the project and making sure it's coming along as expected. So that concludes my results. I wanted to be respectful of time, but also leave some time for questions if you have.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, and thank you and your staff for all that you do at CDR for the children of the region. As Ms. Keene stated, I mean, there are stories abound about successful stories about children who have been able to be enrolled and then ultimately graduate from the program and have found, a path forward. And so I can't overstate it, just how wonderful it is to have you all in the community. As it relates to the project, I'm glad that you have found some cost savings, but it's also not unexpected in this day and age, particularly to have some additional cost to be brought forward as projects start to unfold, because you never know what's behind the wall until you get in the wall. So I don't have any questions in terms of what the request is specifically for, just meeting that larger number. So I appreciate that, and thank you for your time.
Right, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, and I too appreciate all the work that you and your staff do in the community. It's hearing stories like that, that's the only way you can really feel a true measure of what an impact that has. During your presentation, you mentioned 133 children from Williamsburg. What's the overall number from?
I believe the last presentation I gave, we were serving at that moment about 45 kids in the city at the moment. Over time, this was from the feasibility study, and I just pulled right off the number of kids that were listed as pre-K and kindergarten age. And so that's the age band we serve. We don't serve all of them, but we're available for all of them if that helps.
So what's the total number, including York County?
Between York County, so we serve Williamsburg, James City, York, and Poquoson, and we serve, our fatherhood and motherhood programs extend in some cases to Hampton. It depends on if they're willing to travel, or we can do a class virtually. We serve over 1,000 kids a year in that entire catchment area. So we stay quite busy, our staff are quite dedicated, and the need for this facility is, we moved into our space in Norge in 1994, and our entire staff fit in the central training room, and now we don't. We're quite outgrown, and due to our success, I will comment that we're happy to give tours of the space if any of y'all are interested. I understand there's a certain number you can bring without having quorum and some of those issues to concern with. But yeah, we're excited about the space and all it's going to provide for us, especially the MCV residents. I think that's going to really be a game changer for a lot of families that are really struggling with a lot that goes on with a child with special needs. That, once you leave CHKD, it can be, or the Children's Hospital, it can be a pretty lonely place, and that's where our staff step in and really support those families. So,
thank you.
Ms. Grenchier?
Any other?
Yes, hi, thank you so much. This is really moving and so obviously so impactful, and very appreciative of everything that you and everyone at CDR does. And I was just wondering, because I realize I don't know, when people find CDR, first, how do they often find your resources? And then, is it something, a take-all-comers approach that you have? Are there any, what's the, I don't know what screening, that isn't really the right word, but you know what I'm saying.
Great question. So typically we get referrals from three main places, primarily pediatricians. You'll hear where the pediatrician will say, hey, this may or may not be an issue, but I'd encourage you to reach out to CDR. We are subcontracted by CBH to be the Part C provider for the area, so we're part of that process. So we are the ones on the ground who do the assessments for infants and toddlers with delays and disabilities and atypical development. Preemies are also now by law eligible for early intervention. When that was a change about 8 years ago, and that was really welcome. Prior to that, preemies had to be finally assessed eventually and found to have a delay before services could start. When actually like 90% of them would end up being eligible, it just seemed prudent to do that. So we get calls sometimes from hospitals, but it's typically pediatricians. We also do get calls from departments of social services, sometimes court services, and the rest of the human service system. And we also get calls from parents who often will find out about us. Our fatherhood program, the word about that is getting out very genetically and from dad to dad, whereas children with delays and disabilities typically come directly from a pediatrician or medical professional. So some of our programs, we never deny services for an inability to pay. About only one of our programs even discusses finances, and that's because we're required by law to assess a parent's ability to pay. If they can't pay, they don't have insurance, that doesn't matter. We go ahead and provide services, and that's part of where our community support helps out. Some of the projects that we have, Early Head Start has an income restriction. A family working, both parents working full-time, make too much money to be eligible for Early Head Start, to give you an idea of the income thresholds that you have to meet. As I mentioned, the children with disabilities, they have to meet a set criteria that the state establishes by law. Parents as teachers has income restrictions. Motherhood is just, if you've got a baby or expecting, fatherhood the same. So most of our projects really struggle with finding resources for families as they age out. So early intervention and Early Head Start, when you turn 3, you need to be on the way to either Head Start or the public preschool program. And that can feel like falling off a cliff for a lot of our families. So we've created a few different programs to really support and wrap them around so that transition isn't quite as shocking. And we're just there for them through parent groups and that kind of thing. So we also provide training across the state of Virginia to child care professionals, whether they're religiously exempt home-based centers, for-profit centers, or nonprofit centers. That's funded through the Virginia Department of Education, and anybody that has a license as a child care provider is eligible for those services. And that's a whole different world that I didn't cover today, but they'll be co-located there as well, our Center for Professional Development. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the additional explanation. I remember taking a tour out there. It's probably been close to 8 years now. And
Wow.
I know that your programs have expanded, and like everyone has said, you all do an amazing job to help so many people in the community. And you mentioned that you serve about 1,000 children a year. So do some of them stay with CDR for like a couple months or a year?
The longer in the early intervention world, the sooner we can start, the more developmental gain they'll experience. That we've known that. We will occasionally get referral for a child who's 32 months old, and we by law have to be transitioning them out at 36 months. So if we get a call like that, we have to basically simultaneously plan for services and plan for the transition to public school. So we've developed some different approaches for how to make sure that we use a coaching model to coach the parent in how they can use activities at home, play, and things at home to really encourage the child's development in whatever particular area that might be. So we do our level best to pack as much in as we can while we're there, and then have some options for them to make it a little bit of a softer landing when they make that transition. So the ideal scenario is to get a referral. The best example is an expecting mom and an expecting dad that come in and they get rookie moms and dads training. They have a delivery, and there's a variety of services available to them for sure for at least 3 years, and in many cases into kindergarten entry, depending on what their needs might be. So we like to get the referrals early, and if anybody at home's listening, instead of somebody believing that, well, let's just wait on this and maybe they'll grow out of it, that's time that's lost, and we really would prefer to have our staff providing some support to make sure that there's not a regret that later we said, well, gosh, if we had just started 8 months ago, that we might be in a different place. So,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Scott, for the wonderful presentation and also for your time here today. I have one question for you. So I've done a little bit of research concerning just the wonderful services that CDR offers. And I just want to say I appreciate all of the wonderful work that CDR does for the community. Earlier you mentioned that there's 6 different locations CDR is spread across at the current moment, and that these 6 different services will be housed under one roof.
That's correct. Yes, and most of all our staff will be here, and we do hope that has a bit of an economic help for the city, because it's Weller Mill's right there, and it'll, instead of being scattered all over, particularly on extreme ends of James City County. So one office is in Norge and the other is in Packett's Court, and they'll all be here. So we're hopeful that massive staff. But I should clarify too that the majority of the services we provide are in family homes. So while we do have a staff presence and we have activities and therapies that the families can come and take advantage of in the facility, most of the time that facility is where our staff huddle up, come up with a game plan, and then they're out for the day visiting families all the way up from Poquoson to Chickahominy and down to Kiln Creek, basically. So we're York County, that Kiln Creek dividing line is that road going right through the middle of Kiln Creek. So yes, they'll all be here. This is home base, and we'll have a huge amount of people coming in and out of the building every day. But if you ever were to come and visit, and we hope that you will, if you notice some empty desks, it's likely that the staff are out doing home visits. And one of the main things we wanted to focus on with home visits was families without transportation shouldn't have to be worrying about getting access to services. So we bring the services to them and then they don't have to worry. Plus, it allows our staff to look around the house and see if, hey, there's a staircase, let's use that to try to help the child crawl up and reach their favorite toy at the top of the stairs. It's just one example of how our staff can kind of look around a house. We had a kid that wasn't learning to use his trunk, and the parents had put all the toys on the floor. And seeing that they had a coffee table allowed them to get rid of all the other toys, put his favorite on the table, and he took 2 days crying and screaming to get up and crawl himself up to the table to reach it, but he started to finally build up those muscles. And so our staff, it's really helpful when they can be in the home. We also do occasionally see things that are worrisome to us, and we can reach out to our partners in human services and address with the health department or social services things that might be contributing to the child's health, the detrimental things that are impacting their health.
And just out of curiosity as well, will any of the current locations still be in use, especially as CDR grows and more services are offered?
Part of our York County will take back the child care classrooms that we have there. There's 2 classrooms in the Griffin Yates Center, which is on Government Road. We've already left Lafayette High School to go to Life Church. They've got plans for that space. The 2 properties that we have in Norge are being marketed aggressively. It's part of our finance plan as well. And so the other space we have in Packett's Court is leased. And so we'll be moving out and wrapping up our leases there. So they'll be back into the commercial market, and we'll be here, and that'll be hopefully our last move for quite some time. If we do expand, we'll just address that as you know, as it comes up.
Thank you.
Sure.
Again, thank you, Mr. Scott.
Right, thank
Let's
you,
hope you get a
appreciate
good purchaser. Okay, next is the presentation regarding the current efforts of the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District. Robin Woolsey, is she here? That's conservation of time. We'll move on to presentation of the Williamsburg Area Arts Commission outside agency funding recommendations, and we're going to call up Mr. Tom Phelps. Yeah, I probably have to go through all of their
We're
presentations.
going to go through it, yeah.
Did you want to
my
speak-
name's-
Did you want to speak to their presentation?
Excuse the hat, but it's better than looking at all of the bandages and things that are under it. So I had a little surgery. I just thought it'd be nicer to look French than to do the other things. So let's see if we can find, there it is. One back. There we go. Oops, no. There we are. Thank you. So good afternoon, Mayor Pons and members of the City Council, Mr. Den, Ms. Scherer, and Ms. Ramsey, and Ms. Williams. We'll get to know, I hope, in the near future. We had a bit of reshuffling while working on the review of these applications because our meeting was scheduled on the only day during the snow in Williamsburg with the city closed. So we couldn't meet. So we had to reschedule the meeting, which cramped a lot of things that we were doing, but at the same time, I believe we did manage to reschedule, and the commissioners all worked very hard to get these recommendations made on time, and I think with due consideration. So we made the deal. And I'm making this report on behalf of the commission itself, and I want to introduce you to Brandon Mission, who is also the liaison with York County, so we're glad that liaison working at long last. On this occasion, we come before you to recommend awards to 31 arts and cultural organizations that together will represent more than 350 programs, projects, presentations, or exhibits for residents, tourists, visitors, convention goers, educators, and many other interested individuals during the next year-long cycle, which is 2026, that we're reporting on today. With support from the council and other sources of funding, for example, the Institute for Dance, I'm just going to illustrate some things that we do. The Institute for Dance, better known as iDance, will stage performances in the area as well as teach dance to students of all ages and abilities throughout the whole area. We recommend support, which includes an annual performance, which is called a showcase, where dancers of all ages come together to show off in many ways what and how much they have learned over the past year. This, however, is a photograph of last year's Christmas presentation. I chose it mostly because it's so colorful, but it does illustrate exactly what's going on with this company and how they cater to the children of the area, both teaching dance and allowing them to learn performance arts, which I think is important. This slide is a couple of things. Open Door Concerts, which is a pretty regular applicant to us and recommended many times, and the Tidewater Classical Guitar both receive our recommendations this year for support. And Open Door Concerts presents 5 concerts each year in the downtown area of Williamsburg. It's usually at the Presbyterian Church. And even yesterday featured Solas, which was a group that sets new standards for musicianship in the Celtic music tradition in America. This group, the Boston Globe called the finest Celtic ensemble this country has ever produced. That's some highfalutin word there. So I think that this illustrates, however, what we're able to bring to the area as far as concerts go. So the performance filled the hall and drew standing ovation, requiring 2 encores. I mean, it was really a splendid performance. At the Williamsburg Regional Library Auditorium on March 20th, this coming up, the Tidewater Classical Guitar will feature 2-time Latin Grammy nominee guitarist João Luiz, who really bridges classical, jazz, and Latin American music. His performance, I think, will do much to make classical guitar music accessible to very diverse audiences, and they're trying to reach them to bring them into the concerts. So the next shot is the Williamsburg Players. This is an old shot from Anyone Can Whistle. It's a performance 2 years ago, but I just liked the illustration and chose it for this presentation because it illustrates the song and dance routines that are really special to this particular theater. Every year, the Williamsburg Players presents a season meant to enrich the lives of our citizens. They're well-chosen. They're long process in order to choose this season. Talented community members are selected from open auditions. I think that's important. This is a community theater. There's nobody paid, nobody. So but they're still selected from auditions. They rehearse, they rehearse, they rehearse, they rehearse. I've attended many of them, in fact, worked with a couple of shows. And they do dramas, comedies, or musicals with wonderful scenic sets and lighting, all designed, constructed, and staged by community volunteers. Depicted in this slide is Anyone Can Whistle, which is an early Sondheim production, but we recommend continuing support for this organization. And I want to tell you something about the upcoming season. There are 2 more that you can go see even in this year. Harvey will be the next presentation, March 28th through April 23rd, and Pippin the Musical from May 30th through June 15th. You should go, you'll have a wonderful time. $20, inexpensive. And yet our contributions, which are small by nature in the given budget of that organization, help them to do very many of the kinds of things that they do. I'll sideline from my script a moment. This year, the request is for washing machines and dryers, because they have no way of cleaning the costumes and drying them in special processed dryers so that they can continue to conserve them, so that they can re-sew and redo the basic construction of the costumes in order to continue those shows in another manner. I thought that was kind of a special do coming out of the world of the theater. Never seen such a request before, usually get the big time for the students. I'd like to present this one because this is just an illustration of 2 of the opera productions that are staged each year. These are presented by the Opera Williamsburg, with contributing support from the Williamsburg Area Arts Commission. Dress rehearsals are open and free and are especially designed to attract students in the area. Many other supporting organizations combine and collaborate to support opera in Williamsburg. It has a huge budget, and we contribute enough to help them to be able to continue this work. They work hard to earn community support from individuals and corporate sponsors, and this year's request for contributions toward the costs of one of 2 operas to be presented in this season, Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro. Continuing season includes Puccini's Madame Butterfly and Gluck's Eurydice. So go see those. Those will be presented this next full season. We recommend support for young people. These are institutions that develop their talent and give back to the community by performing in theatrical productions, musical concerts, and dance productions. Young Audiences of Virginia, which is on the left here, or Arts for Learnings, builds performance-based on themes such as resilience, kindness, and courage, unwritten scripts, but are composed as they're doing the productions. I think it's very interesting to watch the children in their creative line at that. And then they present them to the school-based audiences in classrooms and in the auditorium, such as the one at the Williamsburg Library. So they do some here. They've actually done some also in the Stryker Center in the small bases. The other side, the Virginia Regional Ballet, I put up here, provides young dancers performance opportunities and presents 2 major ballet performances each year in collaboration with the Williamsburg Symphony Orchestra. So some of the combined funding go on there. So they put the orchestra in the pit. They're not doing this to record players and recorders and so forth. The pit is there. So this popular ballet gleans huge audiences, including family members of the youth selected to dance in the productions. And in the springtime, another ballet from the classical repertoire is also presented, aside from the Nutcracker, which is presented every year, of course, at Christmas time. Youth education and performance possibilities, we believe, deserve the support from the Arts Commission, and so we recommend those. Several larger institutions also receive support from our recommendations and from you all each year. Larger institutions in the area generally apply for support for projects that are designed to attract the ordinary citizens from the surrounding communities. They're not always funds for the particular exhibitions, but for lecture series that accompany them, or for other kinds of specialized programs that go along with what the organization is doing. So here we have the new and very impressive Mascarelli Museum, which just opened again, of art, coincidental with the planned exhibition project on Michelangelo. We have been asked, not this year for Michelangelo, but for 2026, whatever they're doing then, they use this for illustration of that. They will do a series of 12 lectures on this in order to encourage, as well as help support some of the, excuse me, specialized docent tours. So if you really want to see something in depth from this Michelangelo, make arrangements with him. It's our money well spent. Likewise, Jamestown Yorktown Foundation, where local residents will be invited to attend what they're calling After Angelo. They've done this one other year, and we're supporting a whole new lecture series on this, which is the first African-American woman to arrive in Jamestown in 1619. So it tells that particular story, so we get to see that side of what's there. Each of these larger institutions designs their projects with a special emphasis to attract the local members of the community to see these kind of special organizations, which may attract tourists and bring some other people in. I also wanted to show this. This is examples given in this presentation, but there are more as we recommend support. The Williamsburg Symphony Orchestra here and the Williamsburg Youth Orchestra serve as examples of the Commission's support for major symphony orchestras and its youth counterpart. These 2 collaborating organizations both perform major concerts and cultivate music education in this whole area. The WSO presents 5 Masterworks concerts, of which we're asked to contribute, as well as performing in the pit for the opera and the dance and the ballet. So they do all of these kinds of things. The youth orchestra presents 2 concerts each year, which provides individual and group education programming in musicology and the history of music, and individual instrumentation and orchestral performance skills, while other support is claimed the need for the specialized support from the WAC, which they argue helps these youth to adapt to being able to play in an orchestra the size of the WSO. We support other orchestras as well, basically those that do performances in the Williamsburg area. Virginia Symphony, as an example, usually puts together quintets, quartets, and so forth, or musical lecture demonstrations that perform now in the music hall at William and Mary, beautiful center, as well as in the schools and in the classrooms. So we support that. Here are the recommendations before you then. We believe these 31 recommendations will support and stimulate excellence in the arts and will encourage the growth, development, and accessibility of cultural amenities for the benefit of the citizens in the area and visitors to it, and tourism, other kinds of things. The Commission received 32 applications, and we recommend 31 for support. Applications submitted requested $235,000. We recommend a budget, of course, within the budget of $159,000, or 67% of the requested amount. So only 67% of the amount that they have asked for are we able to meet. So the Commission could neither recommend support for all applications at the level requested, nor for funding all of the requested number. So nonetheless, we think that our recommendations are sound and based on keen deliberations, and the commissioners met, agreed upon these figures. It's tough when you're trying to look at requested amounts and say, what direction should we go as a commission in recommending these kinds of things and for how much? But before I close, oh yeah, this is the recommendation. Sorry, I didn't shift the slides. You can see over time what we have done as well. It's pretty close. I wanted to bring this, though, before I close, I wanted to mention the forum, which was presented on Thursday, February 27th. All participants were welcomed by Mayor Pons, and we thank him for a rich, warm welcome. This year, the forum's topic was marketing on a shoestring, and participants agreed at the end, some evaluations are already in, also standing at the door and listening to them, agreed that this was a workshop well worth attending. We've done this every year. We believe this is an outstanding service that the Commission provides for the nonprofit arts and cultural world of our area. So we do that too with some of the administrative costs. Other recommendations are in the package as well. Not all are illustrated up here. I don't have that kind of time. I'd love to show you a complete movie, but he won't let me. He said, no, you only get this much time. So that's my presentation for today, and I'd like to leave some time for questions if there are any.
Good. Well, Mr. Phelps, thank you, and certainly send my gratitude to everybody that serves on the commission. I know it's never easy going through budgets and deciding on,
as well you know.
Yeah, what gets cut, what doesn't, and how much, and so, but the work that you all have done to present us with this is outstanding. And when you went through all of the some of the different programs, what struck me is there's a little bit of something for just about everybody, and I applaud that effort. And it's good to see even things at the Jamestown Yorktown Foundation and supporting that conversation that's happening there, and then having the youth involved in theater. So you've got it all, and I really appreciate that. And I don't have any questions, but again, thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to Mr.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Phelps, and I too appreciate the wide variety of organizations that are receiving funding, and we all know how difficult that is. We appreciate all the work that went into it to bring this recommendation forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will admit that something you said took me back to when I did community dance stuff, and I said, gee, I wish they would have had a washer and dryer, because I remember having a few costumes that probably could have used that. So that really is that's impactful. Okay, so that's pretty great. But in all seriousness, you know, you mentioned these programs as part, you know, of the mission of growing and developing and making art accessible in our community. And it's actually like quite joyous to hear you, because you're obviously very passionate, and you know everything about these proposals and what they're for. And I'm sure that is also a reflection of the committee, and that does this work with you. So just thank you so much for your passion for this, and for taking the time that I know is hard to go through and like the mayor says, make these decisions, but know that it makes such a difference for people who are involved in the theater, whether as a performer or a musician or a set tech guy or gal, and then also for the audiences. So it just really makes a difference throughout our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would just like to reiterate my thanks to you and to the whole commission for putting together this list and trying to be as inclusive as possible, both in terms of type of performing arts, age of those who are participating, and those who will receive the joy of attending some of the performances. We often talk about, cultural activities as bringing a lot of quality of life to a community, but it also is an economic factor, and it can enrich in a number of different ways. And we talk about, too, the transition of tourism. And we've had historical tourism. We're about to embark on a broader sports tourism. And to me, with the Muscarelli opening and work towards a live performance venue, we're about to embark on cultural tourism to a much greater degree. So all of these things we do only help the community, sort of small and much broader. So thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
Yes, well, thank you so much for the presentation today, and I would like to thank the commission as well, working through all the budgets. And what really impressed me was the diverse group of which the funding was awarded. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Phelps.
Thank you.
Again, thank you to everyone that served with you on making this decision. Mr. Morgan, I'm sorry, Mr. Morgan, I'm going to get you just to pause. I've got the soil and water folks just came in. If you don't mind, we're going to keep them and go back to them actually, and welcome. Sure, you can just put them up here and we'll pass them down. Thank you, Ms. Wozelin. We apologize for the schedule confusion. We moved it up to give everybody more time, and we were so grateful that water and soil conservation included time, but here you are.
No problem at all. Thank you all for allowing us to speak with you all today and giving us some time on the agenda. I appreciate the flexibility here this afternoon. My name is Robin Woolsey, and I work for the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District. With me today, I have two elected directors from the City of Williamsburg who represent the city on our board. We've got Dave Beals and Charles Stevenson. As directors, they serve on our board to help guide our work throughout the year and guide the programs that we're doing within the city and our greater service area. So here we have a map of all of the soil and water conservation districts across the state. Just for a little bit of background, we are one of 47 soil and water districts. You can see here on the map we've highlighted our service area. Along with the city, we also serve Charles City, New Kent, York County, and the city of James City County. Here we'll zoom in just a little bit to show you that service area a little bit more closely. In our work at the district, we sort of categorize our programs and our efforts into agricultural conservation and non-agricultural or more residential community scale conservation. Most of our agricultural work takes place in New Kent and Charles City County and Upper James City, and then more of our residential and community conservation takes place within the city and parts of James City and York County as well. Most of our funding as a district is provided by the state. We also seek supportive funding from our localities during the annual budget cycle, and we submit several grants throughout the year as well for project-specific work. So I'll dive into our programs a little bit more. Our educational program is something that we're very proud of. This is really highlighted by the Envirothon program, which, if you're not aware, is a natural resources team-based competition for high school students across the state. These students spend a ton of time throughout the year learning about various environmental topics. They study forestry and wildlife, aquatics, all different kinds of topics. And then every spring they compete in competitions to test their knowledge and test their ability to relay that information and put it into use in a real world scenario. And so pictured here, we've got the Jamestown High School team. A team we're very proud to support. They have done very well in the Envirothon competitions over the years. In 2019, they actually won the national championship, and just last year they won the state championship. So we're very proud to support that team, and we are always looking to include more teams across our service area as well. So we have staff that are dedicated to sharing information about the program and trying to encourage as many students as we can to participate. Next, we have our urban or residential conservation programs, the biggest of which is the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, or VCAP. The goal of this program is to help landowners address stormwater issues that they're experiencing on their property, things like erosion, bare soil, soil loss, excess runoff during storms, standing water, things like that are all different issues that we help folks address. We do that by providing technical advice. So we meet one-on-one with landowners, we assess the property, we hear more and we see more about what they've experienced, and then we try to guide them towards solutions that are going to help address those issues and provide a greater conservation benefit locally and to the broader Chesapeake Bay overall. So essentially all lands aside from state and federally owned lands are eligible for this program. So we work most commonly with private residents. We also work with churches and schools and businesses. So all different landowners are eligible to apply aside from those state and federally owned lands. One component of this program that's very important is that every practice we help install has a 10-year lifespan. So the owner of that practice has to maintain it for that 10-year period, keep it functioning, and that way we can really rely on that conservation benefit for a long period of time. Our staff are always available throughout that period to help address any issues that come up and make sure that we can provide as much support as possible. So there are 12 different practices that are eligible for funding through this program. It is cost share, so there is always some level of financial input from the applicant. Most of these practices are cost shared at a rate of 80% of the total cost of installation up to a cap. And so most commonly in the Williamsburg region, we see the most interest in rain gardens, conservation landscaping, permeable pavement is very popular, and we've seen some interest in dry wells as well. And so the goal of most, if not all, of these practices is to help folks capture stormwater on site and keep it on site. This helps to reduce erosive potential and flooding potential downstream as well. And if you're not familiar, conservation landscaping is essentially the use of native plants to help hold soil in place and prevent further soil loss, all while creating a great habitat as well. So since fiscal year 2020, we have provided just over $49,000 in cost share funding to residents within the city. We have 2 permeable pavement practices that have been installed and 3 conservation landscaping practices that have been installed. Since 2020 and really in the past 3 or so years, we've seen a really huge increase in interest in the program and requests for services from city residents. So we're very excited and very encouraged by that we'll have even more practices coming in the next fiscal year, and even this spring, we've got some landowners who are working on applications now. There is one project we wanted to highlight specifically. It was completed just down the road from here at the Williamsburg Baptist Church. This was a really interesting project, completed back in the fall of 2024, so it's very new. This project was able to actually capitalize on some stacking funding that was available from the Virginia Association of Soil and Water Districts, that was available for public-facing projects, so things that the general public could go and look at and learn about. So this church had these parking lot medians that were very clearly eroded. They'd seen a lot of soil loss. The trees that you can see in the bottom picture were pretty heavily diseased and on their way out, so they were both a conservation issue and a safety concern for folks attending that church or parking in that parking lot. And so we were able to capitalize on both the regular VCAP funding and that stacking funding to help them address those bare soil issues and replace the wet vegetation they had with all native plants. So they have some really wonderful native shrubs. A few native trees were put back in, and then some really beautiful ground covers that should help protect that soil, hold it in place, and then provide a really beautiful feature for their parking lot as well. So we're very excited about that practice. We've already gotten lots of questions and comments and interest in the program just from this one practice. So we were thrilled to get to put that in, and we'll look forward to seeing it this spring as everything grows in. Our other main residential conservation program is our Turf Love program. This is sponsored or supported by the James City County Williamsburg Master Gardeners as well. The goal of this program is to help homeowners understand how to maintain their lawns in an environmentally sensitive manner. We do that by taking soil samples for every client who participates in this program, and we use those soil samples to make sure that they have a tailor-made plan for their property that's going to get them to the lawn care goals that they want to achieve without causing any environmental damage to the surrounding environment, which is most often caused by over-application of fertilizer products or chemicals, or applying them at the wrong time of the year. So we do a lot of work to help folks understand how they can reach their lawn care goals without causing any harm. So the biggest part of this program is, again, working one-on-one with these landowners to help them reach their goals. Alongside that one-on-one work, we also host public educational events. The two biggest ones that we host throughout the year are Turf University in the spring and Super Turf Saturday in the fall. At these events, we bring in professors and speakers from Virginia Tech and our regional turfgrass experts to talk to the general public, whoever attends, about various lawn care topics. One thing that we've really focused on this past fiscal year is making sure that we are incorporating more irrigation education in these site visits as well, so we can teach folks how to properly use an irrigation system, how to maintain it, things like that, so we're not over applying any water or wasting any water either. So now we've covered our main programs. Wanted to sort of recap where we're at with funding in fiscal year 2025. We've talked about the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, or VCAP. The one sort of drawback we have to that program is that there are some inadequacies in terms of what the state provides for funding to support our ability to implement that program and to work with so many wonderful residents. And so because of those inadequacies, we do ask all of our localities to provide funding support to ensure that we are able to have the staff and the resources we need to best serve our residents throughout our service area. So for fiscal year 2025, we were given $6,000 to support that, which we are very grateful for, and then $2,000 to support the administration of the Turf Love program within the city as well, for a total of $8,000 for fiscal year 2025. In FY26, we are looking at increasing our requests for VCAP support. Like I mentioned, we have had a huge growth and interest within the city and requests for those services. So we are looking for an increase in funding to support that work, to enable us to continue to work with these residents and offer this program. And then we're requesting a flat $2,000 again to administer Turf Love. That would bring us up to a total of $10,000 in requests for FY26. Again, to keep doing and growing that work that we're doing. Here's our contact information. I introduced both Dave and Charles. I'm Robin, that's my email there. And then our district programs manager, Jim Wallace, is always available for questions as well. And that's all I've got.
Well, Ms. Wellesley, thank you so much. I've said it in the past, but it sounds like it's not so true anymore, that you guys are one of the best kept secrets. And so now it seems like a lot of people are hearing about the programs and grants that you offer and are taking advantage of it, which is a good thing. If we can help find ways to save off soil erosion and drainage and work on all of those things and turf issues, it's an invaluable resource that our community has. And so thank you for all the work that you do, and Mr. Beal, Mr. Stevens, thank you for your service on the commission as well. So I don't have any questions, but I'll turn it to Mr. Vice Mayor Dan.
Thank you, Ms. Woolsey. I did have a question. When you talk about you've seen an increase, what do you think how does the message get out to the average homeowner that these programs are available?
Yeah, certainly. Part of that is due to a really great outreach specialist that we've brought on staff in the past year to 18 months. I think she's been here now. She's been doing a lot of work to increase our advertising efforts and making sure that we're reaching a broader audience. And I will say we also have a couple of really wonderful contractors in Williamsburg who have embraced this program and are bringing in more people just from their business into the program and really embracing the conservation efforts behind these practices.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any questions, but appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much for the presentation, and I look forward to it, every year. I remember it from last year, so thank you for being here again. Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. I found the proposal you did for me for the pavers. Maybe I'll get back together and get them done, who knows? But I'm glad to know that the word is being spread more and that more homeowners are aware of it. When you talk about contractors sort of spreading the word for you, do you find that that's more with new construction or remodels, or people just getting tired of cutting their grass, or what types of areas and projects are you seeing in the city?
Yeah, definitely. VCAP is a little bit unique in that it's meant to be a retroactive program, and so we have to address issues that are already there, and so that means that new construction doesn't actually qualify. But
projects overall.
Overall, yeah, general work. I do think it's interesting reflecting on our experience with the pandemic, and we were sort of bracing ourselves for a drop in increase in the program overall. And what we found was that really people were stuck at home. They were spending more time at home and in their properties, and just it seems like had a lot more time to sort of observe what was happening on the property. And so we actually saw a huge increase in interest in the program during that period. So I don't know how much of it is sort of stemming from just embracing that that sort of goal of improving the property and improving stormwater management is still sort of having an effect. I think on the flip side, we've also seen over the last several years a really intense change in storm frequency and storm intensity. And so I think some of these issues that, maybe wouldn't have been quite as intense or disruptive as they would have been in the past, or just it's becoming harder and harder to ignore them given the change in storms that we're seeing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the presentation. I just had one question in regards to the educational programs.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you mentioned that there's a program at Jamestown High School. Just out of curiosity, are there any additional programs at any of the other WJCC schools or even the College of William and Mary?
Not that I'm aware of. I think the only other team that we have had in the past has come from York River Academy. And so we haven't had the interest thus far to build an entire team at another high school. We always provide support every year and let folks know that we're here and that we can provide resources as needed. So we haven't gotten that other team off the ground yet, but hopefully we will.
Yes, it looks like it's been very successful at Jamestown with all the championships. So looks like a great program.
definitely. Appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in, and thank you again, gentlemen.
Thank you all.
Okay, now we'll move on to the presentation of the Human Service Partnership Agency funding recommendations. We have Mr. Morgan here. Now you can come up, sir. Welcome.
I should ask Robin if she can help me out with my lawn. In bad shape.
The answer is yes.
Big button in the middle. Great. Good afternoon, Mayor Pons.
Welcome, sir.
And members of the City Council. My name is John Morgan, and I serve as the chair of the Williamsburg Social Services Advisory Board. The other members of the board include Susan Karen, Matthew Swenson, and joining us today in the back is Desiree Lawson and Michael Bennett. I am here on behalf of the board to present to you our recommendations for grant funding. As you are aware, the Social Services Advisory Board reviews the Human Services Partner Agency grant applications on a yearly basis. The board members thoroughly review each application and then meet in December to decide on recommended funding. As in previous years, excuse me, the board takes several things into consideration when reviewing applications and making recommendations to council. These are the questions we consider when reviewing applications. As you can see, we assess the type of services, the accessibility of services, the funding relative to the number of people served, and funding from other sources. Agencies are also asked to describe how their services support the city's vision and mission. Over the past couple of years, board members have dedicated time to learn more about the nonprofit agencies by taking tours or inviting them to speak at our board meetings. In the past year, our board members have toured the Literacy for Life and Old Town Medical and Dental Center and has invited CASA and the Avalon executive directors to our meetings. For fiscal year 2026, there were 18 applications, which included 2 new agencies, Community of Faith Mission and William and Mary Foundation. 11 agencies requested increased funding, which made the total requested funding for 2026 totaling $1.1 million. The board did not recommend funding for 2 applicants, the Lackey Clinic and the William and Mary Foundation. Lackey Clinic did not have the utilization numbers, and William and Mary Foundation has a pilot program that serves very few of our city youth at the moment. We encourage these agencies to apply next year for further consideration. I know you can't read this slide, but I wanted to show you and the people watching what the document looks like that was included in your packet.
It's available online too, on our packets.
And online, thank you. Outlining the specific requests of each agency and our recommendations. We want to continue to support these nonprofit agencies and the incredible work that they do for our community and citizens. We understand the need in the community, but also recognize the difficult decisions that council needs to make when passing a budget. After careful consideration, the Social Services Board is recommending funding to 16 agencies, which total $555,000. This is an increase of $28,700, or 5.5% compared to FY25 overall awards. We again want to thank you for the opportunity to conduct the review of the applications and to present you with our recommendations. If you have any questions at this time.
Well, again, thank you, Mr. Morgan, and Mr. Bennett, Ms. Lawson, appreciate all the efforts that you put into helping the committee make these recommendations. And it's not easy. You've got a lot of worthy causes out there, for sure, and these different agencies do a lot for our community. And so, going through them, and I certainly really appreciate the 6 hallmark questions that you kind of ask of each of these. just to drill down what the real benefit is to the community, and moreover, to make sure that they're not duplicating efforts, I think is important. I don't have any specific questions, but again, thank you so much for the time that you spent on this and your recommendation today. Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Morgan, and thank you to all the board for the difficult task of looking, considering all of these requests. And we know from our personal lives the increased costs that we face, so we know these organizations are facing increased costs as well. But, I think you make a great point in understanding the budget limitations, and we do as much as we possibly can for all these great organizations. So appreciate all the hard work that went into this.
Thank you.
Yes, I too add my thanks to the hard work. This looks like an almost impossible task of making these decisions, because every single one of these organizations does some of the, if not the hardest work in our community. And like the mayor said, I want to echo how much I do appreciate having the questions, because then that helps me understand how you approach and how the committee approached each application, and knowing that you all have this, and I'm sure other commissions and committees do as well, but know that you have this structure, and these are the real, get to the heart of what you're evaluating in each application. I appreciate that very much. So thank you and thanks to you all for all your work.
Yes, I'm going to reiterate my thanks to you, to the whole committee, and those that are here today. A lot of people talk about, how special Williamsburg is and wanting it to be the best place here, but you all show by your actions and your time and effort to help fund those agencies how special Williamsburg is to all of us, and the needs that are in the community. I can only imagine how hard it is to go through the list, because I'm sure you'd like to say, yeah, I'd like to give them full funding, and we just can't do that. And one thing that I think that the public also would find helpful to know is that some of these requests are, what's the right word, mandated, such that there is a requirement from us to meet a certain level of funding from some of the agencies too. So it's not, you're all's, yes, it's answering the questions, but sometimes there's direction to fund some a little bit more than others, perhaps. So anyway, thank you all for what you do, and it's a good list that you put forward to us.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Yes, well, I would like to reiterate my thanks. Thank you, Mr. Morgan, for the presentation, and to the other board members for placing this list together. I would like to also point out, just thank you for walking us through the process and the different criteria you looked at when making these decisions as well. So I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Okay, next is presentation of staff recommendations for the FY26 outside agency funding. Ms. Matsumoto.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pons and members of City Council, for allowing me time on today's agenda to present staff's recommendations for FY26 outside agency grant requests. This year, we began working on a new process for reviewing and approving these applications. Moving forward, the Department of Economic Development and Tourism will lead a team of staff representing any city department that is engaged with an outside agency, requesting funds to fully vet each application and determine funding recommendations to be considered by the City Council. We are working through changes to the FY27 request forms now, and all of the agencies will be notified of the new process ahead of the submission deadline in November. This year, we received 26 applications for outside agency funding, 5 of which were new. The total request of the 5 new applicants was $175,000. Of the 21 agencies that have previously received outside agency funding, 8 requested an increase in funding, which totaled $369,953. Staff is recommending that 21 of these agencies be funded, with recommendations totaling $3,658,588.50. This represents a 9.4% increase over what was awarded in FY25, totaling $314,978.50. Again, not expecting anyone to be able to read this off the screen, but for those following along at home, this slide is only meant to be a representation of an abbreviation of the details provided in the City Council packet. It is available as an attachment online and includes a description of how each of these organizations intends to use the funds that they are requesting of Council. Due to the current budget constraints, staff was unable to recommend funding any requested funding increases for FY26 unless directly related to one of City Council's adopted GIOs. Outside agency requests from arts, culture, and tourism organizations totaled $2,665,250, of which staff recommends funding $2,640,250. As noted in the supplemental materials provided in the packet, this represents a 0.01% decrease from what was awarded in FY25, which is due to the formula-based funding for one of the organizations. Outside agency requests from public safety organizations totaled $78,766. During the staff evaluation of the application from the Peninsula Alcohol Safety Action Program, we noted a discrepancy in the funding formula. Peninsula ASAP recalculated the city's contribution, accounting for city residents' utilization of their services, and as a result of that recalculation, their request was reduced to $5,000. Staff recommends funding of $48,766, as noted in the supplemental materials provided in your packet, which represents a 22.1% decrease from what was funded in FY25. Outside agency requests from community partner agencies totaled $978,794.50. Staff recommends funding of $969,572.50, as noted in the supplemental materials provided in the packet. This represents a 51.4% increase over what was awarded to these agencies in FY26, an increase totaling $329,366.50. The majority of this increase is from the Williamsburg Area Transit Authority, whose request for additional funds is to be utilized for implementation of the 15-minute city GIO in the 2023-2024 slate of goals, initiatives, and outcomes adopted by City Council. As noted earlier, staff was unable to recommend award of any requested increase that was not directly related to implementation of one of City Council's adopted GIOs. This meant that we were also unable to recommend funding for any new agencies this year. These 5 agencies will be encouraged to continue requesting outside agency funds in future fiscal years, with the hope that we may be able to support their missions in a future funding cycle. And with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Well, thank you, Ms. Matsumoto. Certainly a lot in here to read and look over, and I apologize I haven't done all that in advance of this meeting, but certainly will. So that as we budget process, maybe I'll have some more recommendations or be able to share that certainly with the city manager as he prepares his budget. But I don't have any questions. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you, Ms. Matsumoto, and the detailed information. I've read through it and looked at, how the money's going to be used and changes in the requested funding and what they've received in the past. And as the mayor stated, it'll take some time to go through and kind of organize all of that, organize thoughts on that, but very detailed information, so thank you for the work.
Yes, thank you very much. I don't have any questions, but appreciate all the work that's gone into it thus far, and yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yes, I add my thanks, and I'm particularly pleased to know that there's going to be a more refined and defined process going forward. I think that'll help not only staff in deliberations, but also the public be aware of what's needed for future funding. And so, thank you.
Well, thank you for the presentation. Hopefully, over the next couple days, we'll be able to take a deeper look and see how we can really move and kind of see how all the pieces will play out. So thank you for all of your hard work and this recommendation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, it takes us now to council communication. Does any member of the council have anything they'd like to share? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Open forum, which is again another opportunity for anybody to come forward that'd like to speak. Seeing none, I'll close that open forum, and I don't believe we have anything for closed session. No, sir. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. McKay?
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Kerninger?
Aye.